Hey, what's going on, everybody? My fault. I am a couple minutes late, but thank you very much for coming by, hanging out, doing something a little different to switch it up. We've been doing a bunch of drama and talking about one of the hottest topics on YouTube, and that's the defamation lawsuit between Cardi B and Tasha K. There have been a bunch of topics and a bunch of perspective. I definitely have had my say. But I've also promised that I would do yet another watch and reaction to the British House of Commons. And we are looking at one of the more recent sessions, January 19th of 2022, Boris Johnson. So, hey, if you are a friend to the show, a member of the Wordsmith family, and you happen to be across the pond, New Zealand, Scotland, everywhere, you're more than welcome to help us better understand everything. But hey, like I said, thank you very much for being here. Shout out to you. We'll probably be here for about a good hour, no more than an hour and a half, because I have another engagement and I want to make sure that I'm punctual there. But hey, what's up? Thank you so much. If you haven't been following, or if you're not really familiar, the British Prime Minister is going through some stuff, and there are calls from him to, you know, resign, step down. You're terrible. You're trash. And what you've done to number 10 Downing Street, okay, is a travesty. And the people of England, Great Britain, Scotland, and everywhere else, they're like, nah, hey, what's up, Glorious Purpose? And thank you all very much. I will be doing the live about Jenny Nguyen. So if you're interested in the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and her being fired from the show, and, you know, want to talk about that, then I'll have that live for you as well. Obviously, the biggest YouTube story would be Tasha addressing her trial and the damages and the judgment one time and one time only. So more than likely, I'll probably see what a few people have to say in terms of their reaction to it and what commentary they provide. And then I may or may not talk about it. You say you love all things politics, so this is right up your alley. Well, I'm glad you're here. Okay. And again, like I said, I like to do different things. I know some things are going to bring the crowds, right? Some things may not bring the crowds, but I definitely want to show you some other elements because, again, you want to be multifaceted. So I want to go on ahead and get this video queued up, and I want to play it. I don't want to interject too much, but I'll save a lot of my comments for the end. You get what I'm saying? Now, I have not had a chance to like properly edit this to make it perfectly concise. But again, it's just me recording and just saying what the chamber was talking about. So we're going to check this out. And I may pause if we happen to hear something, or one of the MPs really lets the prime minister have it, or there's a really good, here, like this part right here. Oh, you didn't get to hear it. Hold on. Or if we have a situation where, there's a here, you get what I'm saying? Here. But I kind of want us to kind of watch, and then I'll save some of my commentary or the majority of it for the end. And then we'll kind of break it down, talk, and then I'll let you go. That way we can still be done in about an hour, maybe an hour and 15. And I feel good about it. So ladies and gentlemen, non-binary and gender-neutral, non-conforming individuals, hey, this is an American perspective, watching Prime Minister's questions, okay, observing the House of Commons, UK Parliament. Again, I am an American. I'm a Black American, but I am giving my opinion, my perspective, my reaction, okay, my understanding, okay. And I'm not even going to try to appropriate the accent or vernacular, because I want to speak my own way and just let you know, hey, I got respect for you because I'm coming from my own country and giving you all a shout out. Amused says, bye, Bojo. I get the sentiment or the feeling that he's not well received universally, okay? I get the impression, based on some of the comments in this chat that I have seen and some of the stuff that I have had the opportunity to read, he is not, his approval rating, dare I say, is lacking, okay? Hey, what's up, Charlotte? My thing is, you have a whole country on lockdown, okay? This is what I do understand. You have an entire country on lockdown. Hard-working, law-abiding, citizens, right, are doing what they can, dealing with the effects, whether it's economic, whether it's family, social, whether they lost the loved ones, burying, sickness, whatever. And you have the top of the top, the 1%, the elite, forego and completely ignore the very rule and the very responsibility that had been handed out to the average citizen. And for what? It wasn't like they were like working to try to generate some income or trying to figure out how to, revitalize their economy or working with scientists to try to get a breakthrough vaccine or something along those lines. They were, as Keir Starmer said, okay, pushing the booze cart through number 10 Downing Street, okay? I repeat, down to the number 10 Downing Street, child, okay? All liquored up. But anyway, let me go on ahead and play this video so we can laugh and kiki and caca. So we are reacting to Prime Minister's questions, January 19th, okay, 2022. DT, hashtag pray for Tonga, says, hey, Jaded Nerd and Wordsmith family, I hope all is well. Time to watch Mr. Donkey Man. Oh. All right, y'all, let's go on ahead and get into this. So, yeah, it's giving that. And I ain't mad at it, okay? All right, bet. Let's see.
Prime Minister's questions. Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to point out that the British Sign Language interpretation procedure is available to watch on Velvet Live TV. I know.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah. We'll play it. And we'll react to it accordingly, but I don't want to chop it up because it's already 30, almost 40 minutes. The portion is really juicy, it's really toward the end. And then there are some things that I found quite interesting during. But again, it's a typical session. So again, I may stop in just to say something, but I don't want to elongate it because we're already at 12 minutes. So this plus, 40 minutes makes it 52. Plus about 8 to 10 minutes of commentary, which is about an hour. We can add another 10 just in case. Plus we have to fit in the dry begging portion of our broadcast. So let's go on ahead. So ladies and gentlemen, non-binary and gender-neutral, non-conforming individuals, the time has come. Okay, I don't know why it's playing. Sorry about that. I know that was very confusing. Sorry about that. But let me go on ahead and put it back where I had it because I had it set to play. So sorry. I know that was probably very loud and very disconcerting for you. But I'm going to go ahead. We're going to play it. And we'll do everything that we're supposed to do. So that's my bad about that. My apologies. But give me 1 second. And I think we have it. Oh, okay, cool. I don't think y'all were able to hear it. Real quick before I check in with you, were you all able to hear anything or were you all able to hear me? Amuse says, we agree. We don't agree nor understand. We also know it's all about the boys club. D says, hello, Glorious. Says, hey, what's up? Yeah, I still couldn't get over the time I was in Oxford watching him being interviewed and asked myself how the heck he was in power. May I offer an American perspective because he seems very common. Yeah, I got the video. Lemonade. So we're about to check it out. I was just trying to hurry up. But let me hurry up and get that together. But I'm about to play it. But I just want to read these comments real quick. Yeah, but he seems very common. Okay. Good afternoon. What's up? I'm glad you're here. Cherise says very. You heard clearly. We heard the video. Okay, my bad. All right, so let's go on ahead and play this. Let it do what it do, and then we'll go on ahead and get into our commentary.
That the British Sign Language interpretation proceeding is available to watch on Parliament Live TV. I now come to Prime Minister's questions. I now call Wendy Chamberlain.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister, question 1.
Mr. Speaker, I will shortly be updating the House on this country's fantastic progress in tackling COVID-19, including our booster programme, enabling us to ease Plan B measures and restore the ancient liberties of this country. Mr. Speaker, I know that the whole House will be delighted that Her Majesty the Queen has given permission for a special medal to be awarded to all those who deployed to Kabul.
You keep Her Majesty the Queen's name out of your filthy poo mouth, you old inverted flop of a mop. How dare you besmirch and imbrue Her Majesty the Queen, okay? How dare you, sir? The only reason you would even presume to be familiar with Her Majesty the Queen is because you happen to slide your way into that position of Prime Minister when you look like you should be carrying out the chamber pots. You look like you come from a long line, a lineage of chamber pot cleaners, those who may have received a royal warrant. Oh, I may be American, but I know a little bit, but I know of a warrant, a royal warrant, you know, the businesses and specialty, you know, and goods and services that are deemed so excellent that they get a royal warrant. It's like this endorsement by the palace that, you know, we rock with them. I'm trying to Americanify so we can understand it. I dare say that your pedigree consists of those who scrubbed chamber pots, not those who are elbowing in the chamber, affecting commerce down to the parliament. I don't look at this individual, and it does not. When I look at Boris Johnson, I think about the Lion King, and I think about that awesome pair, Timon and Pumbaa, and I really fixate and focus my energy on the warthog, a stout, portly individual, wild in its instinct. And when I look at this man with his inability to brush up on his hair or his policy, shout out to Angela Rayner, and I'm sitting here looking at this doofus of a buffoon, this common man, and I dare say it does not instill confidence within me.
Operation Pitting saw our servicemen and women deliver the largest British evacuation since the Second World War. The whole country can be immensely proud of their service. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Wendy Chin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year we were told by the Prime Minister there were no Downing Street parties. Then it turned out there were parties, but we were assured that no rules were broken. Last week, we heard that rules may have been broken, but that he thought it was a work event. And now yesterday, from the man who wrote the rules, it was, well, nobody told me what those rules were. Mr. Speaker, 5 weeks ago, the people of North Shropshire were clear, and the people of North East Fife are being clear to me now. No matter the excuse, there is no excuse for taking the British people for fools. Will the Prime Minister agree it's now time for him to resign?
No, Mr. Speaker, but what I can tell her is that, as I said to the House last week, I apologise sincerely for any misjudgments that were made, but she must contain her impatience, Mr. Speaker, and wait for the inquiry next week before she draws any of the conclusions that she's just asserted.
John Burrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Latest evidence and research shows that the UK is the most attractive country in the world amongst young people across the G20. amid intense soft power competition from other countries, including China, can the Prime Minister assure me and other members of the British Council All-Party Group that the government will meet the British Council's funding requirements to ensure it doesn't have to close any more offices overseas and to ensure that it commits all its energy to retaining our top spot?
Mr. Speaker, I entirely share my right honourable friend's enthusiasm for the British Council, which is a wonderful institution that we all love, and that's why we're providing through the FCDO £189 million of funding this year, a 27% increase, Mr. Speaker, in spite of all the difficulties this country is facing, 27% increase on the previous financial year. We've also provided a loan facility of up to £145 million to support all the wonderful work that the British Council does.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by warmly welcoming...
Hey, can we just take a moment, okay? I should have made this the thumbnail. As a matter of fact, I think I might screenshot it, okay? Hold on, let me see if I can screenshot it. I might screenshot it or I'll go through the video and screenshot it to get Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner. Anytime I can get those two in the same thumbnail, I feel pretty good about myself. And I was trying to think the last time we did a reaction and we were talking about Angela and how she dragged Boris Johnson about brushing his hair and brushing up on his policy and all of this, right? And I was marveling I loved her inflection. I loved her syntax. I loved the huskiness and the command she has when she's at the podium addressing the Prime Minister and just speaking in the chamber overall. Shout out to Angela Rayner. But she gives me very much The North Remembers, okay? It gives me very much Sansa, okay? It gives me very much Beyond the Wall, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, and every time Mr. Starmer gets up, and I know he's a lawyer, but he's so charismatic, and there's a melodic quality to his syntax and the way he attacks the sentence and really utilize. He's his own instrument when he speaks, and it's quite theatrical. So I love it. And when I hear him, it really makes me think back to these movies, these period pieces and stuff. And you could hear them, in Parliament back then. And I don't see him wearing a suit. I see him, in a cod piece and pantaloons, and everybody is sitting around in court. And he's highlighting and calling out the hypocrisy and the foolery and the fool-la-la. And then you got, looking across the way, this commoner sitting up there all up in the Parliament. And it's giving very much, man, if you don't go on somewhere and go on about your business. But anyway, let's get back to this because it's really good.
Listen to the Prime Minister.
Can I just say, I expect people to listen to the Prime Minister. I certainly don't want the Leader of the Opposition shouted down. You might not like the day, but this is the day that we've got. Yes, Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not bothered. I assumed it was directed over here. Can I start by warmly welcoming the honourable member for Bury South to his new place and to the Parliamentary Labour Party. Mr. Speaker, like so many people up and down the country, he has concluded that the Prime Minister and the Conservative Party have shown themselves incapable of offering the leadership and government this country deserves, whereas the Labour Party stands ready to provide an alternative government that the country can be proud of. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party has changed, and so has the Conservative Party. He and anyone else who wants to build a new Britain built on decency, security, prosperity and respect is welcome in my Labour Party. Every week, the Prime Minister offers absurd and frankly unbelievable defences to the Downing Street parties, and each week it unravels.
I've been elected the chair. I don't need to be told how to conduct the business. So if somebody wants to do some direction, I'll start directing them out of the chamber. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I see the very noise. I'm sure the Chief Whip has told them to bring their own booze.
Order.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I love. Bringing receipts, addressing the audience, understanding the assignment, being so witty and clever and quick on your feet, and you can just hurl insult and throw shade and everybody chuckles and the speaker here. Yo, that was so masterful, okay? Here I am, Keir Starmer, looking smart in my blue suit, okay? My hair combed. I look well groomed, okay? I look up to the task. And then I have this slovenly, sloppy thing of a man, this old wretch, okay? Standing across from me, okay? Not even able to stand up properly at the podium, okay? Even Tony Blair had more of a presence at the podium than this old cad. I dare say, you know, it really makes me wonder what makes this man, and I'm going to say it in an American accent, so it may sound funny to you Brits, and I apologize. But what in the world makes Boris Johnson think that he's walking around like he's the dog's bollocks? No, ma'am. No way, no sir, no they, no them, okay? You may have the intellect of a pair of dog's bollocks, but you ain't the dog's bollocks. Anywho.
Let's try and get on with questions. It's going to be a long day if not. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, first he said there were no parties. Then the video landed, blowing that defence out the water. Next, he said he was sicker than furious when he found out about the parties, until it turned out that he himself was at the Downing Street garden party. Then last week he said he didn't realise he was at a party, and, surprise, surprise, no one believed him. So this week, he's got a new defence. Nobody warned me that it was against the rules. That's it. Nobody told him. Since the Prime Minister wrote the walls, why on earth does he think that his new defence is going to work for him?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, he talks about the rules, and let me repeat what I said to the honourable lady across the aisle earlier on. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we must wait for the outcome of the inquiry. But I renew what I've said, Mr. Speaker. But when it comes to his view,
Nobody believes what you say. Can we have a little less? I want to this Prime Minister like I wanted to leader of the opposition. I want the same courtesy from both sides. Prime Minister.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, if we'd listened to the right honourable gentleman about COVID restrictions, which is the substance of his question, then, Mr. Speaker, we would still be we would have been in lockdown after July. If this is the truth, if we listened to the Labour front bench in the run-up to Christmas and New Year, Mr. Speaker, we would have stayed in restrictions with huge damage to the economy. And it's because of the judgments that I've taken and that we have taken in Downing Street that we now have the fastest growing economy in the G7 and GDP, Mr. Speaker, now back up above pre-pandemic levels. And as for Bury South, Mr. Speaker,
Tabitha is asking, what are they arguing? What is this session of Prime Minister's questions? To generalize it, Tabitha, they're still discussing the scandal about what this was when, the Rona first hit, and there was like a worldwide lockdown. So different countries were locking down and trying to get a containment on what was going on. And there were mandates and restrictions and rules and things of that nature. And while people were locked down and trying to follow the rules, and the businesses couldn't do this, and, you know, people are getting sick, they're passing away, they're having loved ones die alone and stuff like that, and having to manage that and deal with the unemployment. You know how difficult it was to be locked down. It was found out that they was partying down to the number 10 Downing Street, okay? And people are calling him out, saying that, you know, when other members within your own party are called out for things that they have done, and you're encouraging them to be held accountable, and it's like he doesn't want to be held accountable. All he wants to do is acknowledge that, you know, he needs to apologize. And I think the reason why people are frustrated is because it took a lot to get to the admission of guilt and the truth. How are you going to be the prime minister? How are you going to be the one who crafted these laws for your people? And then you're going to say that you didn't understand. You mean to tell me that you're so unaware that you can't tell the difference between a party atmosphere and a work atmosphere? Which leads me to ask another question, because does this speak to the culture of work under your administration? Are you prone or privy to having the drink cart, or as Keir Starmer said, the booze cart being pushed and wheeled through number 10 Downing Street? So was it just another day at the office, and that's why you can't really recall whether or not it was a party, function, social, whatever, during the lockdown? So people feel he's hypocritical. He hasn't properly, you know, apologized. He won't step down. He will not resign, okay? Yeah. I think that's pretty much what it was. Boris had 30 parties when British citizens would be fined £10,000 for doing the same. I think it's a situation where you're looking at the haves and the have-nots and the elite, and you know what I'm saying? And his reaction and his responses when he's being confronted, you know, by members of parliament, I think also adds fuel to the fire, because I'm just an outsider looking in, and I'm observing, and I'm highly upset, and I'm like irritated, and I'm like, how dare you, sir? Like, seriously, how dare you operate under the guise of entitlement to the level that you just you just choose to ignore the obvious, and you are dead set on enjoying the advantage of your privilege, and it just makes me, I don't understand. So yeah, that's where we are. Yeah, it's very, we've seen that behavior over here in the States. But let's listen into some more. I don't mean to be talking that much. My bad.
For Bury South, let me say to the right gentleman, Mr. Speaker, by all leave, may I say to the right honourable gentleman, that the Conservative Party won Bury South for the first time in generations under this Prime Minister, with an agenda of uniting and levelling up and delivering for the people of Bury South. And Mr. Speaker, we will win again in Bury South at the next election under this Prime Minister.
Look, it's important I want to hear both sides, and I don't want this continuous chant, because if we do, there'll be less people on these benches, and the same on the other side. I expect both sides to be heard with courtesy. Keir Starmer.
Bury South is now a Labour seat, Prime Minister.
Sorry. Order. Did somebody want me to apologise? No, somebody shouted apologise. I hope it wasn't aimed at me. No. And so we'll also have less from that corner, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not only did he write the rules, but some of his staff say they did warn him about attending the party on the 20th of May 2020. Now, I've heard the Prime Minister's very carefully crafted response to that accusation. It almost sounds like a lawyer wrote it. So I'll be equally careful with my question. When did the Prime Minister first become aware that any of his staff had concerns about the 20th of May party?
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to Right Honourable Gentleman for repeating the question that he's already asked. We have answered, Mr. Speaker, that it is for the inquiry to come forward with an explanation of what happened, and I'm afraid he simply must wait. But he asks about my staff, Mr. Speaker. He asks about my staff and what my staff are doing and what they have told me. And I can tell him, Mr. Speaker, that they have taken decisions throughout this pandemic that he has opposed to open up in July, Mr. Speaker, as I've said, to mount the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, and Mr. Speaker, to double the speed of the booster rollout, with the result that we have the most open economy in Europe, Mr. Speaker, and we have more people in employment and more employees on the payroll now than there were before the pandemic began. That is what my staff have been working on in Downing Street, Mr. Speaker, and I'm proud of them.
Keir Starmer.
So, Mr. Speaker, apparently Sue Gray is going to tell the Prime Minister when he first became aware that his staff had concerns about the May 20th. The Prime Minister's account gets more extraordinary with each version of his defence. If the Prime Minister's new defence were true, it requires him to suggest that his staff are not being truthful when they say they warned him about the party. It requires the Prime Minister to expect us to believe that whilst every other person who was invited on the 20th of May to the party was told it was a social occasion, he alone was told it was a work meeting. It also requires the Prime Minister to ask us to accept that as he waded through the empty bottles and platters of sandwiches, he didn't realise it was a party. Does the Prime Minister realise how ridiculous that sounds?
Mr. Speaker, I've said what I've said about the events in Number 10. He will have to wait for what? And Mr. Speaker, I think he asks for further clarification. I think there are lots of people who are interested. I say this entirely in passing, Mr. Speaker. Lots of people are interested in the exact legal justification from the learned leader of the opposition for the picture of him drinking a pint of beer or a bottle of beer. Mr. Speaker, I merely perhaps he could tell the House about that in a minute, Mr. Speaker. But what I can tell the House is that throughout the pandemic, people across government have been working flat out to protect the British public with huge quantities of PPE, so we can now make 80% in this country, with the biggest and most generous furlough scheme virtually anywhere in the world, and the fastest. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, if we listened to them, we would have stayed in the European Medicines Agency, and we would never have been able to deliver the vaccine rollout at the speed that we did.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister thinks the only accusation he faces that he once had a beer with a takeaway, then Operation Save Big Dog is in deeper trouble than I thought. If a Prime Minister misleads Parliament, should they resign?
So, Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. The Right Honourable Gentleman is continuing to ask a series of questions which he knows will be fully addressed by the inquiry. He is wasting this House's time. He's wasting the people's time, Mr. Speaker. He continues to be completely
Okay, look, I gotta jump in, because again, I want to jump in minimally until we get to the end. But it seems like every time somebody asks him a direct question about taking accountability, resigning, stepping down, addressing these allegations, And he consistently brings up the inquiry. The inquiry, the inquiry. And it's like, what is the inquiry, the report, supposed to prove or dispel? I'm not certain. I have yet to hear this man like really give a definite or like a definitive answer. The leader of the opposition just asked if the prime minister deceives parliament or, you know, whatever. Basically, if you lie to parliament, should you resign? And he can't even answer that question. So he instantly goes into stuff that really doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but not at this particular time. Whatever the inquiry will reveal, then there are many questions that you can ask upon that. Is it independently run? Was it biased? Could it have been tampered with or compromised? What was the ultimate goal, end goal, whatever, of this inquiry? And furthermore, you as an individual, do you not feel a call or a compelling feeling to resign because you failed the people? You failed to be, you know, an example. You are a hypocrite. You are a liar. You are someone who was all too willing to enjoy privilege and your entitlement, and yet you still were willing to, you know, enforce a hefty fine on the citizens of your country, knowing that people are economically struggling and that situations are what they are. And it just makes me wonder, for what? So you can have the booze cart? That's what we should be having. Anybody down there having a bachelor party, bachelorette party, whatever, retirement party, coming out party, okay? You just want a party. And ain't a party till you get a booze cart. It ain't a party till you get an intern to go get you a suitcase and to come back with a suitcase filled with wine and booze. Okay? We have an American over here. His name is Peyton Manning. He actually was so disgusted with a place kicker, American football, not football, American football. And he was so disgusted with this alleged individual coming to work liquored up, allegedly. So we have a situation where you've got the prime minister having the booze cart pushed through all up and down number 10 Downing Street, okay? All liquored up.
Relevant, Mr. Speaker, because we have an inquiry. We have an inquiry, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not going to anticipate that inquiry any further. What I can tell him is that it is because of the judgments that were taken in Downing Street and because of the willingness of the British people to put trust, by the way, Mr. Speaker, in those judgments, to come forward in huge numbers to get vaccinated, which people did, and I thank them for it from the bottom of my heart. People did that because they listened to our messages, Mr. Speaker, and it's as a result of that that we now have the fastest growing economy in the G7 and youth unemployment, which he ought to care about, youth unemployment at a record low, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I know it's not going well, Prime Minister, but look on the bright side. At least the staff at number 10 know how to pack a suitcase. Mr. Speaker, last year, Her Majesty the Queen sat alone when she marked the passing of the man she'd been married to for 73 years. She followed the rules of the country that she leads. On the eve of that funeral, a suitcase was filled with booze and wheeled into Downing Street. A DJ played and staff partied late into the night. The Prime Minister has been forced to hand an apology to Her Majesty the Queen. Isn't he ashamed that he didn't hand in his resignation at the same time?
Mr. Speaker, I understand why the right honourable gentleman continues to politicise issues.
Sorry, Prime Minister. We normally would not, and quite rightly, mention the royal family. We don't get into discussions on the royal family.
Well, Well, in that case, Mr. Speaker, I must ask the right honourable gentleman to withdraw it.
I've dealt with it. Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, are you going to...
I won't withdraw it.
Order. Prime Minister, we don't want to go through that again. I'll make the decisions. The answer is that the next question, I'm going back to Keir Starmer to ask his final question. Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst the Prime Minister wastes energy defending the indefensible, people's energy bills are rocketing. Labour has a plan to deal with it. Axe VAT for everyone, provide extra support for the hardest hit, and pay for it with a one-off tax on oil and gas companies. A serious plan for a serious problem. What's the government offering? Nothing. Too distracted by their own chaos to do their job. While Labour was setting out plans to heat homes, he was buying a fridge to keep the party wine chilled. While we were setting out plans to keep bills down, he was planning parties. And while we were setting out plans to save jobs in the steel industry, he was trying to save just one job, his own.
Okay. First of all, may I make 2 observations? First, Angela Rayner, that hair is whipped, okay? Those curls are sitting. That color is giving me everything. It's perfect. It's not too loud. It's not too matte. It's great. Those tresses are sitting in the chamber, giving very much, okay, what are we going to do about this? And then furthermore, you're just sitting there, okay? Like, you wish the Prime Minister would pop off. And because I learned that they actually have lines that are on the floor that they're not supposed to cross. And you just look like you wish, you know what I'm saying? You wish a mofo would. You wish the Prime Minister would pop off, okay? And she looks about to be 6 feet tall. She's a very statuesque, prominent individual. And I dare say the Prime Minister is what? I heard he's what, 5'9"? He's a short man, okay? I don't think he wants no parts of Angela Rayner. Seriously. I think she'd mollywop him all by herself. I feel like Keir Starmer is doing a masterful job of just eviscerating him. Every time he not only speaks, but it's just the sneering in his voice, like it's just the way he addresses the Prime Minister. It is so like he has such disdain for this man, and I live for it.
Doesn't the country deserve so much better than this out of touch, out of control, out of ideas, and soon to be out of office Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what this government has been doing to look after the people of this country throughout this pandemic and beyond. We have been cutting the cost of living, helping them with the living wage. We've been cutting taxes for people on low pay, Mr. Speaker. We've been increasing payments for people suffering the costs of fuel.
Prime Minister, can I just say to everyone in here, our constituents wants to hear the questions and the answers. The great British public, the members of this United Kingdom which you're representing, they need to hear. Please, let's hear the questions and answers. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue to look after people throughout this pandemic and beyond. But we've also, Mr. Speaker, been cutting crime by 10%, putting 11,000 more police officers already out on the street. Record home building last year, Mr. Speaker. More homes than at any time in the last 30 years. We are building 40 new hospitals, Mr. Speaker. Gigabit broadband has gone up from 9% coverage in our country to 65% already. And as I said already, I think 3 times or 4 times today, we have more people, more employees on the payroll now than before the pandemic began. And unemployment, youth unemployment, at a record low, Mr. Speaker. And when the history of this pandemic comes to be written, and the history of the Labour Party comes to be written, and believe me, they are history and will remain history, Mr. Speaker, it will show that we delivered while they dithered, and we vaccinated while they vacillated, Mr. Speaker. And the reason we've been able to lift restrictions faster than any other country in Europe, and we have the most open economy and the most open society in Europe, Mr. Speaker, is thanks to the booster rollout and thanks to the work of staff up and down Whitehall, across government, throughout the NHS, Mr. Speaker, and I am intensely proud of what this government has done.
You'll get more if you let the questions come. Mark Palsy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following on from the excellent news on the economy and jobs, the Prime Minister will remember my question to him last June about proposals for a gigafactory in Coventry. Last week, local councils granted outline planning permission to create 6,000 new skilled jobs, to secure many thousands of others, inject £2.5 billion into our local economy and level up across our region. With fast-rising demand for greener and cleaner electric cars, may I ask him for his support to ensure the swift delivery of this vitally important project?
I thank my honourable friend for campaigning for this wonderful project, and we are supporting the electric vehicle industry. Will be made another £350 million available through the Automotive Transformation Fund on top of the...
Every time Boris Johnson talks, all I hear is this. Let me play it again for you. You know what I want? I'm going to say this real quick. We got about 20 more minutes. And that way I can still be done around 4 o'clock and have time for what I have to do. But look, they need to bring back the old way, okay? I want to welcome you to my channel, okay? Whether you're American, you may be British, you may be from New Zealand, you may be Australia, you may be from the continent of Africa, you may be from Asia, Pacific Island, wherever you are, Canada, Mexico. I'm glad you're up in here. I'm just sharing my genuine enthusiasm for observing government and how it's practiced. I'm just giving y'all my American perspective on how we see it, or at least how I see it. I think this is the fiercest, most entertaining, most fascinating form of government because I love the confrontation, okay? And I love the fact that a lot of it is rooted in, you know, your words. And are you able to, you know, clap back with your words? Can you hold your own? You know, are you funny? Are you witty? Are you clever? Clever, right? I live for it. All this man has done is deflect. Again, shout out to Angela Rayner, okay? Shout out to the North. The North remembers. And let me tell you something. There is a presence when Angela Rayner speaks. There is a presence when Keir Starmer speaks. You know what I want to say before I let the rest of this finish playing and we're going to get back into it? It's absolutely terrible when the opposition has a stronger voice than the party that's supposed to have been elected in. When I look at Keir Starmer, I see charisma, okay? When I look at Angela Rayner and other members of the opposing party, I get charisma, okay? Grit. You know, you understand what I'm saying? When I look at Boris Johnson, I think of a shaggy dog. When I look at Boris Johnson, like I told you all, don't let me find out that your claim to fame is a pedigree of a royal warrant equivalent to chamber pots, scrubbing old chamber pots. Okay? Out of all the characters down in Game of Thrones, I dare say that Boris Johnson reminds me of the eunuch. And that's all shade. All right, y'all, we got a few more minutes.
£500 million commitment that we've already made in the 10-point plan, and I know that the campaign for Coventry Airport is an excellent one. I look forward to seeing how it develops.
We now come to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week was supposed to be Operation Save Big Dog, but it's quickly become Operation Dog's Dinner. Over the past few days, we've had more damaging revelations about Downing Street rule-making, more evidence that Parliament has been misled, and an even longer list of ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous excuses from the Prime Minister. First he claimed there were no parties. Then he wasn't present. Then he admitted he was at them, but he didn't know it was a party. And then, Mr. Speaker, the latest sorry excuse is really the most pathetic of them all. Nobody told me. Nobody told me. Nobody told the Prime Minister he was breaking his own rules. Absolutely pathetic. The Prime Minister, you know, what a look. The Prime Minister laughing once again, laughing at the British public. The Prime Minister is taking the public for fools. Nobody believes him.
Nobody. When he said dog's dinner, again, giving you all my perspective, right? He's dragging Boris. He is letting the Prime Minister have it. Every time he said nobody, oh man, that is like music to my ears. It is so melodic, okay? In his three-piece suit. Oh, it is so right and proper. Shout out to the right honorable gentleman. Let him have it. Yes.
Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility? Resign. Go, Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker, but I thank him for his question again, and let me just remind him that there's an inquiry that is due to conclude. I believe he is wrong in what he asserts, Mr. Speaker, but we'll have to wait and see what the inquiry says. But, Mr. Speaker, I think the most important thing from the point of view of the UK government is that we're coming out of the restrictions that we've been in. I'm delighted to see that that's happening in Scotland as well, and that is very largely thanks to the wonderful cooperation that we continue to see across the whole of the UK, though you wouldn't believe it to hear it from him.
Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid nobody is buying this act anymore. There ought to be some respect and dignity from the Prime Minister. Let's remind ourselves, more than 150,000 of our citizens have died, and he's partying, he's laughing. Mr. Speaker, it simply isn't acceptable. The fake contrition, the endless excuses, the empty promises that it will be different only if we give him one last chance. This is a Prime Minister who arrogantly believes that he's above the rules, a Prime Minister who brazenly twists the truth, a Prime Minister who simply isn't fit for office. The Prime Minister's former Chief Advisor has said that he lied to Parliament, breaking the ministerial code. Prime Minister, a resignation offence. Public trust is hemorrhaging. With every day that passes, this Tory government loses even more credibility. When will the Tory MPs finally do the right thing? Show the Prime Minister the door.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the right honourable gentleman, but I must say that I disagree with him, and I think that when you look at the levels of trust that the British people in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, across the whole country have shown in government, that there is the single biggest index, Mr. Speaker, of that trust has been their willingness to come forward voluntarily, Mr. Speaker, unlike many other countries in the world, to get vaccinated on a scale not seen anywhere else in Europe. And that is because of our ability and the NHS's ability to persuade people that it's the right thing. It's a fantastic thing. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, it's also a tribute to the United Kingdom, because that vaccine rollout was a UK effort.
Paul Benson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to exporting, as you're well aware,
file punches well above its weight. And the Prime Minister saw this when he visited BAE Systems' Factory of the Future in Lancashire last year. In addition, fantastic local businesses such as Helical Technologies, Tangerine Holdings and Nature's Aid are doing a great job for flying the flag for Lancashire globally. But I've also got many smaller businesses who are eager to get exporting into new markets. What steps is the Prime Minister taking to help file businesses make the most of Brexit and maximise export potential?
Well, I thank him for championing. I thank him for what he's doing to champion trade with.
You know what I hate the most about Boris Johnson during Prime Minister's questions? You know what I despise the most? What I loathe? You know what truly just, oh, Lord, I cannot take it. And I thank you. It is, I'm going to tell you something. It's not the issue. Okay, you can be condescending. Okay, you may be condescending. You may have the capacity to be condescending. But typically, it's like a contract of understanding. You know how typically you have certain sentences where the you is understood. It's the subject of the sentence, but you don't have to denote it. It's understood. The unwritten rule, right? And when I look at this doofus, okay, this cad, this wanker, okay, and he just has to give the obligatory thank you. More so, I really feel like it's just like he's not even listening. He has his pre-canned responses. And he feels like if he grovels enough, okay, the page boy, the squire, okay, if you grovel well enough, the king shall, dismiss thee. You know what? Boris Johnson gives me the energy of a member of the court waiting to be dismissed by his or her majesty, the king or queen. Okay?
With Latin America. And I've no doubt that small businesses such as Squire Hare, are eager to get into those new markets, and we will do everything that we can to help and support him in his efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the cost of living crisis deepens, this government's priorities get ever more remote from my Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath constituency. Only this week, I learned a veteran in my constituency, James Scott, took his own life as a result of his struggle with mounting financial pressures. This is a government who are found to have acted unlawfully by the High Court over COVID contracts and now preparing to write off £4.3 billion allocated to those COVID schemes. Why can the UK government find billions of pounds for profiteers and fraudsters, but they can't find compassion to treat the people with dignity, lifting the benefits cap and reinstating the cut to universal credit?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to say how sorry I am for what he's had to say about James Scott, and this government does as much as we can to support veterans, and that's why we published the Veterans Action Plan only the other day, Mr. Speaker. But what we're also doing is ensuring that we support people throughout this crisis. He mentions, and I've said in my answer to the right honourable gentleman, many of the steps that we're taking to protect people on low incomes, and we will continue to do more, Mr. Speaker. He attacks the contracts for PPE. Actually, I think it was an astonishing thing at great speed to be able to give this country 17 billion items of PPE, thanks to the efforts of people across Whitehall. Mr. Speaker, this country is now capable of producing 80% of our own PPE.
Kate Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Shortly before Christmas, my constituent, Oliver Freckleton, was found at home having been stabbed to death on the eve of his 20th birthday. Yesterday, his heartbroken parents held their son's funeral. Oliver leaves behind a partner and a baby daughter, and 2 teenagers have been arrested for his murder. Now, this tragic event leaves behind a devastated family, friends, and a very worried community. I'm grateful for the work that Staffordshire Police is undertaking to tackle violent crime in my constituency, and the extra 149 additional police officers recruited is very welcome. But does the Prime Minister agree with me
that a multi-stakeholder approach is vital to tackling crimes amongst our young people? And what can the government do to support not just the police, but schools, colleges and local authorities in working to address this issue?
My honourable friend, first of all, I'm very sad to hear the news of the loss of her constituent, Oliver. And like so many victims of violent crime, the answer, as is the case with so many victims, the answer is not just policing, though that is vitally important, and that's why we're investing so massively in 20,000 more police officers and supporting them with toughening the law, Mr. Speaker. But it's also, as she rightly says, important to get all the institutions of the state to work together: schools, colleges, the social services and the health service, mental health service as well.
Jessica Morton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Why is it so hard for this Prime Minister to admit that he made the rules, so he should know the rules and he should follow the rules? Everyone out there knows it's as simple as that. And if he had any shred of compassion for all those out there who've suffered through this, he'd go.
Exactly. If he had any shred of compassion, decency, empathy, competency, aptitude for the job at hand, he would resign. Okay. How vote house? Here.
Mr. Speaker, I entirely understand people's feelings, and I entirely support what she says about obeying the rules when you make the rules. She's completely right. On the other hand, I do urge her to wait, as I've said to the benches of it, to wait until next week.
Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opposition have been told there's going to be an inquiry. They've visited every single question on one issue. Well, my constituents wants to get on with other things. In January 2021, the government estimated that at least 800 million will be released from the Dormant Assets Scheme extension. Does you agree with me that funding through a new community wealth fund will be a catalyst to level up the most left-behind communities, and the bill should include specific provision for a consultation on the scope, shape and nature of such a fund?
Mr. Speaker, we certainly are legislating to, I thank you very much, and we will be legislating to expand the Dormant Assets Scheme to include new financial assets, which would unlock an estimated £880 million. We'll be considering how to spend the English portion of that, and the Community Wealth Fund that he proposes is certainly an option, and I thank him very much.
Peter Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Anne has told me a friend saw the ambulance outside the house on the night Anne's husband died. She wasn't allowed to go into the house to comfort her friend. Anne's husband went to his rest in an almost empty building, while scores of his friends stood freezing outside. Anne went home to an empty house to grieve the rest of the day alone. My constituent Susan wasn't allowed to go in the ambulance or even follow the ambulance, blue light and all, after her husband had a heart attack. Other constituents had the heartbreaking realisation they weren't allowed to go into care homes to break the news in person to their relatives that someone else in the family had died. Mr. Speaker, in their words, not mine, in their words, the Prime Minister is a charlatan, a hypocrite and a liar. What will he now say to my constituents?
Look, I know you're repeating what your constituents said. I want more moderate and temperate language. Prime Minister, you might just want to deal with the general question, certainly not the answer.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to repeat that I understand the feelings that he has relayed to me, as I said last week, and I sympathise very deeply with the feelings, and I understand why people feel as they do. And I thank people very much for everything they have done. I recognise the enormous sacrifice that people have made. I apologise for misjudgments that may have been made in number 10 by me and anybody else, but please can I ask him to wait for the inquiry to conclude.
Andrew Lower.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently attended a debate held by my honourable friend for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, seeking a central London memorial for the Photographic Reconnaissance Unit. And in it I referenced my Northampton South constituent, mosquito pilot, Mr. George Pritchard, who is 98 next week and is one of the last surviving members of the unit. Will the Prime Minister join my honourable friend, me and Mr. Pritchard in backing this fitting and needed memorial.
I thank him very much, and I will certainly do what I can to support it, though, of course, as he knows, the memorial to George Mitchell, though, as he knows, this is a matter for local authorities. What this House and what this government can certainly do is ensure that memorials are not desecrated, as they have been across this country, and make sure that we support legislation that penalises those who indulge in such desecration.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when a Prime Minister is spending his time trying to convince the great British public that he's actually stupid rather than dishonest, isn't it time that he goes now?
Yeah. Isn't it time that he goes now? Will the Prime Minister? She just said stupid. Look. I'm going to let this video, we got about 7 minutes, so it's going to finish. And then what I'll do is immediately upon the conclusion of this video, I shall do the dry begging portion of the broadcast. And then we'll say our final goodbyes because we're getting close to our deadline. I wish I could stay longer, but I hope those of you who have joined, I'm hoping you enjoyed yourself on some level, in some capacity. I find it quite fascinating, and I haven't even had an opportunity to dive into the House of Lords, okay? If you cannot tell, I love to speak. I am quite verbose, and anything that I just live, okay? I live, and I truly appreciate the fine art of, banter, throwing shade, and I just live. So that's why I'm so excited.
Mr. Speaker, I think that was a question for you rather than me, but I'm not. Look, I've made my point. I think that the British public have responded to what this government has had to say in the most eloquent way possible. They have beaten COVID so far, Mr. Speaker. They have helped to defeat COVID so far, Mr. Speaker, with the steps they have taken by getting vaccinated and implementing Plan B, and I thank them.
Just for the Prime Minister, for the record, it's not the Speaker's questions. Sir Robert Goodall.
Our armed forces have earned the respect and admiration of our nation, not least during the pandemic. On Remembrance Sunday, we commemorate their sacrifices, but on Armed Forces Day, on the 25th of June, we will celebrate all that is amazing about our Army, Navy and Air Force. In a normal year, we get about 20,000 people at the event in Scarborough, but this year we will finally host, after twice being postponed, National Armed Forces Day. Will the Prime Minister pull out all the stops on land, sea and air to make this truly an event to remember?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that Armed Forces Day will be absolutely spectacular across the country, and that Scarborough will make a terrific contribution and a notable contribution as well.
Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last April, I asked the Prime Minister if he agreed with the principle that politicians shouldn't lie. He replied that he concurred with the basic principle that the honourable gentleman has just enunciated. Would he like to amend the record?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Simon Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The vast majority of people, and indeed politicians across Northern Ireland, believe that whatever the question, double jobbing is not the answer. Could I urge my right honourable friend to listen to the majority and ask him not to move the government amendment in the other place later today?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I'm advised that I think the amendment in question is indeed going to be withdrawn.
Twist.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents are rightly angry at the Prime Minister's behaviour. But while Downing Street fights to save his political life, people across the North East are worrying about rising food and energy bills, rising unemployment and rising levels of child poverty. He talks about levelling up, but my constituents are seeing opportunities cut. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that his government has failed and it's time for him to go?
No, Mr. Speaker, I really don't agree with her, and I don't think she could have been following anything that's being said this afternoon. We have unemployment falling to near record lows, Mr. Speaker, and we have job vacancies. We have job vacancies at record highs, Mr. Speaker. That's what Conservative governments do. They create jobs and they get the economy moving.
David Davis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many on these benches, I spent weeks and months defending the Prime Minister.
I'm going to move this back a few seconds because this entire session of the House of Commons, this was January 19th. I feel like you can create a microcosm. This exchange between this MP and the Prime Minister. Okay, so this question, this statement, okay, this reprimand, okay, from a member within your own party, and to have it conclude the session almost in a sense to kind of like bring perspective. I may be reading too much into the situation, and I will definitely understand that and accept my ignorance. But the energy in the room shifted when this man stood up and began to speak. I got the impression that either he's been practicing, he's been involved, he's known within the party, he's been there a while, or has been influential or something. So when I listened to the way he presented this was the best part of this session for me. Let me take it back a couple of seconds. We got like maybe less than 3 minutes left, and then we'll dry bag and go home.
The amendment in question is indeed going to be withdrawn.
Twist.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents are rightly angry at the Prime Minister's behaviour. But while Downing Street fights to save his political life, people across the North East are worrying about rising food and energy bills, rising unemployment and rising levels of child poverty. He talks about levelling up, but my constituents are seeing opportunities cut. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that his government has failed and it's time for him to go?
No, Mr. Speaker, I really don't agree with her, and I don't think she could have been following anything that's being said this afternoon. We have unemployment falling to near record lows, Mr. Speaker, and we have job vacancies. We have job vacancies at record highs, Mr. Speaker. That's what Conservative governments do. They create jobs and they get the economy moving.
David Davis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many on these benches, I spent weeks and months defending the Prime Minister against often angry constituents. I've reminded them of his success in delivering Brexit and the vaccine and many other things. But I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
In the name of God, go.
Order. Prime Minister.
I must say to the right honourable gentleman, I don't know what he's talking about, but what I can tell him, I don't know what quotation he's alluding to that he's referring. But what I can tell him is that I think I've told this House repeatedly throughout this pandemic, I take full responsibility for everything done in this government and throughout the pandemic.
Stephen Kinnock.
Does the Prime Minister agree with the Leader of the House that the Leader of the Scottish Conservatives is a lightweight?
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative approach to the Union is one that I think is right for our country. We want to keep it together, and I think Conservatives in Scotland do an excellent job, and that's why their stout defiance, their stout defence of the Union was repaid at the last election, and Labour, Mr. Speaker, is increasingly endangering our unions.
Clayton Drummond.
Mr. Speaker, and many
Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary and gender-neutral, non-conforming individuals. I want to say thank you very much for yet another reaction to the British House of Commons, UK Parliament, Prime Minister's questions. Again, I am just an American. I'm a Black American, and I just have a love and affinity and a keen interest in how government is practiced across the world. And I find the House of Commons fascinating. The theater, the pageantry, the alliances, the shade. Okay, I love it. If you cannot tell, I love using words and vocabulary, and the House of Commons, or Parliament more so, is a perfect place for an individual who has the aptitude for oration or public speaking so that they may convey their point. And I feel like I connect on that level. I'm about to play the dry begging portion of our broadcast. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves thoroughly. Okay. Thank you very, very, very much. Right. In the name, he said, in the name of God. Okay. Go. Let's say this again. He said, in the name of God, go. Okay. He implored the Lord. All right, look, let's do the dry begging, and then I can say my goodbyes because I have a few minutes for my other engagement. So let's do the dry beg, and then we'll return and we'll conclude this show. Thank you again for all your support. I appreciate you. The dry begging portion of our broadcast. I repeat, the dry begging portion of our broadcast. This show is brought to you by our subscribers, the members to our channel, our amazing Patreon support, and viewers like you. Whether you like the video, subscribe, or share, are you in the bushes, down in the dirt, or have you chosen to upgrade to our luxurious skybox? The hand-dipped, beer-battered catfish tenders are a house specialty. But it does not stop there. Financial support has always been paramount to what we do, and there are a variety of ways to do so. Super Chat, CASHAPP, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. These options make it possible to pay the light bill, the internet, so that we may convene day-to-day laughter, hilarity, and hijinks. Kikis and kakas will ensue. Thus concludes the dry begging portion of our broadcast, which is brought to you by our subscribers, the members to our channel, our amazing Patreon support, and last and definitely not least, viewers like you. We now return to our regularly scheduled programming, already in progress. So thank you all so much. That is what I like to call the dry begging portion of our broadcast. It is the most civilized way that I may procure support in a financial manner so that we may keep the dream alive. I hope you enjoyed this session, okay? This Prime Minister's questions. Thank you all so much. I'm so glad that we all had this opportunity to be here. thank you again. Okay, look, if you all are interested and if you enjoyed it, let me know, and I will do this maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, and we can react to this, because it appears that Boris Johnson is the gift that continues to give. So there shall be content. Be on the lookout for my video, the live discussion on Jenny Nguyen, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But allow me to be flexible within that time slot. I believe a lot of people will be reacting to what Tasha K may have to say in regards to the settlement, the damages, the lawsuit, and Cardi's statement. So be on the lookout for that. That's it. But look, thank you again. Please feel free to type in your questions, comments, and concerns, whatever your parting shot or your lasting impression may be. Type that in the chat. I'm going to play the closing music, the outro. I will not be dragging, but I hope to see you all next time. And thank you again for all the likes, subscriptions, the super chat. DT said the dry begging portion of the broadcast is sponsored by Matt Hancock's personal secretary. If you can't get the job, sleep with the man that got it. Boom. Allow me to work on the dropping the mic meme so that I shall be able to provide some comedic relief. But that super chat is akin to a dynasty slap. So that has earned a dynasty slap. Let me go on ahead and play the outro music. You all take care. I am Jaded Nerd, and I will talk to all of you next time.